This episode is proudly brought to you by the F-35 partner team of Lockheed Martin, BAE Systems, Northrop Grumman, and RTX. With over 1,000 Canadian employees at 5 major facilities across Canada, the F-35 program is providing unmatched capabilities and interoperability for Canada and allied militaries around the world. Learn more at www.f35.com/Canada.
Fuel and ignition switches. On. RPM switches. Set. PD switches. Normal. Doors and hatches. Closed. Lay down. Strobe light. On. Restart check is complete. Clear left. Engineers. Start number 2. Starting 2. Wind 31010, Pilot Project Podcast. Clear takeoff. Runway 31 left.
All right, we're ready for departure here at the Pilot Project Podcast, the best source for stories and advice from RCAF and mission aviation pilots, brought to you by Skies Magazine. I'm your host, Brian Morrison, and today we're once again doing something different for our show and featuring our first American guest. With me today is author of the book Moonchild and United States Air Force veteran Tech Sgt. Anthony Dyer, a retired aerial gunner on the AC130H Spectre gunship and the HH-60G Pavehawk helicopter. Anthony, I'm pumped to continue our chat and learn more about you and your book today, so thank you again for being here.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm glad to be here, man. Appreciate it.
Listeners can check out part 1 to hear about Anthony's early days in Appalachians, as well as joining the USAF and his first baptism of fire on the AC-130H Spectre gunship. Today, we'll be talking about his operational life, as well as his post-release life and some of the things he went through in that journey. So, as we said before, you started deploying to Afghanistan. Can you tell us about what your mission there was? Maybe a little review on kind of the missions you guys were doing there, as well as describe the deployments in general?
Yeah, so we basically there's 2 types of gunship missions that would happen. And what I mean by that is that there's the planned ones where like you've studied this operation for at least a week, and there's products and there exactly who the guys on the ground are going after. It's very planned, very detailed. You know where other air players are going to be above you, below you, etc. Then back then we had pagers, believe it or not, and like basically for a troops in contact situation, basically what that means is like the guys are getting lit up and they need your close air support like now, and you would get certain numbers on a pager that would alert launch you. Like you would read, okay, we got to go to the TOC and then get our whatever we have and then go. And the agreement sort of was like 30 minutes off the ground to going to the op at least. And so it's either one of those 2 things. And sort of mentioned earlier, in 2011, it started to slow down a little bit, but not entirely. And but basically, yeah, there was a lot of, raids and like if there's any type of direct action stuff, like the guys are kicking down doors, like we were there often as the insurance, so you wouldn't always shoot, but, once a week or something like that would be like not an unrealistic number to shoot something like that. But, there was nights where we would take off and like it was a kinetic type engagement where like they get, this guy they want him dead, right? And like we would shoot 105 round and proximity type round and just, come back, Then there was nights where, we were getting out earlier where you're just doing a lot of droning and keeping your eyes on certain stuff and painting that picture for the ground guys.
So there were nights where you guys had like a specific person that you were after?
Yeah, there'd be nights where like the guys on the ground would, like let's say the SEALs are going after this guy or that guy, and you would brief so much like before that operation, like you would know everything's going to happen. You studied it that much, and then basically they go in and they bag and tag this guy, get information, stuff like that, right? And then there's SSE at the end where you're getting all this different. What that means is getting the computers, cell phones, all this different equipment, and see what other intel you can get. So it sort of builds on each other.
Okay.
But yeah, there was all that going on, and then there's the the other side what I was talking about with the beepers. Like you would get paged, and like before you even overhead, the guy on the ground is clearing you in the gauge with a 40 mil and a 105 to shoot. And that was honestly some of my favorite ones. Were like basically that you would have nothing but a location and a call sign and a radio frequency, and we would go on that information and go to where they were at. And it's a thing, like I said, you never get used to. You're so many miles out, and and the sensor operators are picking them up and stuff like that, and they just start running because you're noise propping. At that point they know, and it's over, and it's usually a quicker night after that, I would say. So
yeah. So we got a couple terms there I want to just quickly go over. You said TOC, which I believe is Tactical Operations Center.
That's correct. Yeah.
We talked about troops in contact, which is also referred to as a tick. And that's a pretty common term, I think, in most Western militaries. Another kind of important part of the process is that your crew would get tasked via a 5-line message by radio from a joint terminal air controller, or a JTAC. Can you explain what a 5-line and a JTAC are and how this process goes?
Yeah. So a JTAC stands for Joint Terminal Air Controller, and usually it's it's either like a combat controller it's a certification is what it is, and basically they're qualified, just like we're qualified to fly an aircraft, do our certain jobs in the aircraft. They get qualified on calling in close air support. So and those guys, even the combat controller pipeline, those guys, like, I couldn't imagine doing what those guys do just to get through that.
Their job is crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. Superman school for a reason. I definitely did not do that. But yeah. But they're usually the guys calling us in. There is different, different nations have different JTACs with different, units or whatnot. But basically, they're the guys that call you in for the close air support. And, I got an example of how one would sound, calling in the gunship specifically. And it's usually like a 5-line, like special operations, like gunship control type, calls for fire, if you will.
You say you have an example?
Yeah. I got one. Just sort of, it would sound something like this if you want me to go ahead with it.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it would say this, for example, like, Spectre 6-1, this is Reaper 4-5, fire mission over. Then we would respond, Reaper 4-5, Spectre 6-1, send it. Line 1 would be like, my position, TRP2 marked by IR strobe. And then, line 2 would be like target location, bearing 270, range 500 meters. And then line 3 would be your target description, what they're giving you. Like, you got 3 enemy fighters out in the open. And line 4 is what they're going to clear you to shoot with, would be like the 105, like high explosive, for example. And then line 5 is a really important one where they're like, you're clear to engage. And if it's a danger close shoot, which means we're shooting really close to the bad guys, that there's some risk that has to be bought. And you ask for the ground force commander's initials to basically give you that permission.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like the danger close shoots. They're rare, but they do happen. And that's basically there's a decision that has to be made between the front of the aircraft and the back, and we talk about it. And we have a saying where the guys on the ground on the rounds, right, because they're calling us and giving us that permission. But we on the switches where, like, hey, if we do this, like, there could be the worst case scenario, which would be fratricide. And that's something you definitely won't ever have to do one of those, because it gets hairy.
How many were danger close shoots common?
Not too common, but they happened. I would say probably the whole time I did it, probably like 3 times. In Afghanistan, all for those. But
I hate to ask, but did any of them result in friendly fire?
No.
Oh, thank God for that.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine. I probably would have never been able to continue if that would have happened, something like that.
Yeah, that's the worst. There's basically nothing worse in warfare.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So you touched on this a little in the last episode. You mentioned in the book that people ask if being on the gunship was like the game Zombie Gunship, which probably most people have seen advertised on their phones, or I'd imagine people have played Call of Duty and wondered if they were similar. What's it really like to crew a gunship, and what do those fictional examples get wrong?
Yeah, I would say that particularly those examples get wrong, like the rate of fire for the 105. Like you look at even movies like where the Transformers scene where Tyrese calls it in on the Decepticon, I believe it was, and then I believe the Covenant has a portrayal of that as well. But basically the rate of fire, and they look like saber rounds or something coming out, but you're getting very slower rate of fire, 4 to 10 rounds per minute on the 105, and just basically that, and yet the fact that there's actually another human life at the other end of that you're taking, so it's a very personal thing with that too, so people ask me if I played like Modern Warfare, so all that stuff, I'm like, nah, man, because got the shirt, man, right? Like, I love doing it, but like at the end of the day, I don't want to play a game with it or something like that,
That's fair. I never thought about the biggest difference there, which, as you said, is that there's a human life on the other end of that round. And those games obviously can't make that real. So whether it's, zombies or a transformer getting hit or something that's not even human, or even a game like Modern Warfare where it is a person, it's not a real person, where you've done that with real people. So you can't simulate that.
100%. Yeah. And that's why even like going through training, I was getting at earlier, like, there's certain things that they can't train, that the experiences you have in combat and whatever that is, that very terrible situation that they can't simulate. So that's why they're sort of, they lean on you a lot,
Yeah, for sure. Now, this is kind of an interesting topic, and it's something that I think Canadian military tends to shy away from a little bit. But you talk about killing in the book as being your job, which, given what a gunship is and what it's for, makes sense. Can you describe what it's like to engage the enemy and keep those special operations forces or soft folks safe?
Yeah, so I think seeing the big picture, like the why behind it all, is to make sure, as mentioned earlier, those guys get home, and there is, so you see some carnage obviously with that, and the especially in the debrief, and you're going over all this stuff, and you're seeing that, basically replay, right, and but yeah, you realize that there's a bigger picture to it, and like that we do it for them, and to save lives, so, and at the end of the day, man, they're usually terrorists that you're killing, right? So it's part of it,
Yeah. And I guess, they're going to be there one way or the other, right?
Yeah,
Those Americans have a job to do, and they're going to be there. So they might as well have the best support possible to bring them home.
100%. Yeah. And like I said, it's all about them. And, it's, like I never regretted like a round that went out to take care of a high value target, or like a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was all about, the light in the situation and getting those guys home. And, it's like that never bothered me, but, some guys, it may, I don't know, different airframes, stuff like that. But you definitely, the gunship, I remember we even signed a letter like, hey, like in this job, there's a high ops tempo and there's going to be lives taken, you had to sign that letter. So,
How did it feel, as you say in the book, to stack bodies in large numbers and see that kind of carnage? Did you find that it affected you or your peers?
So I had one friend that it affected really, really bad, but he ended up getting help, and he's a lot better man for that, and got out and everything. But he's a really good gunner, really good aviator, and just a really good person, And we went into the ISIS conflict, and it was pretty wild at first because there was really no guys on the ground, and it was like basically like a person sitting in a tactical operations center with like a general, right? Like,
yep.
Hey, that's hostile, clear to engage, stuff like that. But yeah, it was a lot of numbers in that one, and some people it did affect, some people it didn't.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you just don't know. You don't know who it's going to affect. I'm sure there's a science behind it. I'm sure that as they keep studying post-traumatic stress disorder and various combat traumas, that they're going to learn more about who it affects and why. But you just don't, on the surface of it, you don't know who it's going to affect. Some people walk away from it and they're okay, and other people walk away from it deeply affected for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and I think the important part with all this, like my main message in all this and getting this story out, is like, we're very normal men and women doing very, very uncommon, unordinary things, right? And no matter what side of this coin we're on, whether it's America, Canada, Britain, like we're all in this together, and like there's going to get to a point where like, it's okay not to be okay, and you have to realize that fact. And, if you get help, I feel like I'm a better man because of that, because I made that conscious decision to choose better over bitter,
Me too. Absolutely. I'm still a work in progress, but I'm so much better than I was years ago. And I'm so glad that I went and got help. It was a turning point in my life for sure.
I'm pulling for you, Brian. You got it, man.
Thank you, man. Hey, just out of curiosity, did you ever support Canadian troops in Afghanistan? Anything like that ever happen?
Yeah, there was a couple of Canadian SOF, I can't remember exactly what they were doing, but I remember, pretty much special operators across the globe, and like our partner nations, right? We supported it, man. The Aussies, the Brits, the Polish at one point. I remember that, the stuff like that.
Right on. That's awesome. What is the craziest thing you witnessed as a gunner on the Spectre gunship in Afghanistan?
I think that's a very good question. The craziest thing. Yeah. I would say the moment where, long story short, we were at Bagram, and there was this guy that worked at the chow hall, and he was a third country national is what it was called. And basically he had base access, and what it was we ended up getting in a pretty heavy shoot in Afghanistan one night, and I didn't think anything of it, and like there anywhere from like 20, it's approximately 20 dudes, I think, something like that, were shooting RPGs again at, our guys, right? And we ended up getting into it with them, and we get back, and usually we would always land, daylight would be coming up, we'd get breakfast, and there was waffles and omelets, and And like, man, we're like, where's this waffle man at, right? Like, where's this guy at? Like, he made good waffles, and then,
Yeah.
basically like we realized like, man, that guy, man, he made, good waffles. And they replaced him. And we're like, man, I wonder what happened to that guy. And like 2 weeks later, like one of the, the Green Beret teams come up like, hey, just so you guys know, you guys smoked a waffle man the other night.
No.
The other night, yeah, I mean, stuff like that you can't make up, man. It's crazy stuff like that. Like how he had.
So he was Taliban.
Yeah, supporting Taliban. Yeah, and we ended up getting in a shoot near base. I remember it, and mopping the floor with him. But yeah, it is what it is, And but the scary part was that guy was on base. Like, man, like,
yeah.
How does that happen?
Yeah, that is crazy. That's wild. So now we're going to get into a war that I also took part in as an ally as well. In late 2014, the emerging threat was ISIS. You deployed to Kuwait as Senior Director of Operations, or SDO. The ISIS mission was fully ramped up. What did your job involve as SDO?
Yeah. So it was a lot of I believe actually at this point, because we were in Afghanistan, and then the other crew got alerted to wake up to go to Kuwait.
Okay,
that was 2014, and
yeah,
and 2015 is when I actually went. By the time those guys, they were over there so long, by the time they got back, we were going out, and we went out there. But yeah, it was basically to take care of the men and women that fly, the guys, and you're monitoring flight hours, and there's rules just like like just for example, like to an aviator deployment, like 90 days you have 330 flight hours, and it is a really hard thing to do to get a waiver above that.
Yeah,
and that's for rest reasons and your mental clarity, stuff like that. But yeah, I was managing that, make sure everybody's air conditioner was working, a lot of stuff like that. And we were really new to that air base. And like, I remember different agencies, you're going to need the support guys, and I remember we would give static displays like to sort of paint a picture like, hey, this is what's going on. This is who you're supporting, right? To the HVAC guys, the air conditioner guys, was Kuwait, man, it's hot, right? And,
oh yeah.
I remember one guy asked me
if
we
drop
leaflets out. Yeah. One guy asked me if we drop leaflets out the gunship. I'm like, no, man, we don't do that. So just dealing with stuff like that, and it was a very weird thing because you're eating in this beautiful chow hall, you're getting ice cream, you're getting this best food in the world, right? And at a deploy location anyway, and 2 hours later you're flying over Baghdad, man. Like that's like wow, like just that switch I had to turn on, or they had to turn on every time they would do that. It's a hard thing to put in words, really.
Yeah, what months were you there in 2015?
So it was I got there before May, so it was March, April, for like 6 months at that point.
So we were actually there at the exact same time. Were you flying out of Ali Al Salem?
Yep.
Oh, we're on the same base.
Yeah, you were there at that point. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, same base, same time. I was flying in the P3. We call it the CP-140 Aurora, but doing ISR, collecting data on targets and things. So
I'm pretty sure we gave you guys a few static displays and vice versa.
Yeah.
If I remember right. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool that we were there at the same time at the same place. And I totally agree. It was totally weird too. We had a tempo of like basically day on, day off, and we had two crews. So the Aurora was flying every day, but each crew was flying every other. And it was weird to go to the DFAC, the dining facility, get this like amazing food. I loved, like you said, the waffles on Sundays and the curry on Fridays. Like you get used to all the days and stuff. And then like flip the switch and now you're over Iraq and you're watching a firefight happen and rockets are flying and tracer fires going everywhere. And and it was pretty crazy days during 2015. Like the fighting was, especially around like Beji, north of Baghdad, and it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to put in words, that switch, right? Like that mental moment to where you're like, okay, like I need to do this. I need to get my head clear so we can go do this mission, right?
Yeah.
And there's a pool one day and there's crab legs and lobster on Friday. The next thing you know, you're thousands of feet in the air, and
Yeah, and I found what was tough for us was what I found scary personally was that we were always like way behind like the enemy lines, right? Like you're either over Mosul, the capital of ISIS, or you're way over in like west of Iraq, or all these crazy places where like anything goes wrong, you're not getting home.
Oh yeah, and that was always a very real like sort of, I don't know, always in the back of my head, like that's when you remember you're serious to all that stuff, like because you're like, man, like the stuff that was going on that ISIS was doing, man, that was terrible, evil stuff, and like you said, if I couldn't imagine going down out there, man, like,
Yeah. That's
just,
basically the root of the issues I still deal with today is the fear from that time. And
oh, yeah.
it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and they were like, they started out really dumb. I'll say that, and then they got smart, and there was stuff they had that could, hit us, right, stuff like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it's a way to be smart on our end too.
Yeah, absolutely. How was the mission against ISIS in Iraq different from the mission against the Taliban in Afghanistan?
Yeah, so there was a lot of like type 3 control with so what I mean by that is I sort of talked about earlier, but like a guy sitting in basically this big room with all these screens and like probably like a colonel or general, declaring what's hostile and all this different stuff that goes into that, and a lot of those type of shoots at that point anyway. There was a couple, boots on the ground stuff there, but yeah, it was very rare. But it's probably 2 or 3 of those total.
And how did that compare to Afghanistan? You said Afghanistan was more boots on the ground?
Yeah, I would say Afghanistan definitely. You got door kickers, guys going in and stuff like that. And Iraq, man, stuff like the Peshmerga. You'd see them do things, and
yeah, way in the north.
Yeah,
there was different players and stuff for sure. Like I think Iraq was more. Typically, it was more either Peshmerga, which is Kurdish militia in the north, or the Iraqi military themselves, and then like some SOF, right? But to a limited extent.
Yeah, it was very rare for soft boots on the ground in those days anyway.
Yeah. Was the fighting more or less intense in Iraq than Afghanistan at that time, and in what ways?
I would say that there was definitely, we shot more, I would say, in Iraq when ISIS first kicked off than I did, as Afghanistan was winding down. It'd be nothing, at that point to go get in an engagement, and that, with that, there would be like, surface to air fire, stuff like that, and self-defense rules of engagement where like, yeah, they just shot at us, and at that point, like, you do like a sparkle talk on and they know it's over, they're dead at that point. And,
yeah,
so it's stuff like that.
Can you explain what a sparkle talk on is?
Yeah, so a sparkle talk on would be like if you have MEGs on it, imagine this IR, like this laser pointer that like comes down from our aircraft to where like, okay, I'm gonna sit in the back looking out a window, I'm gonna move this thing around to where I can get the sensor operators or the CISO or WISOs like screens on that to look at it real time to what shot at us, right?
And for the listeners, a CISO is a combat systems officer and a WISO is a weapons systems officer.
And then once that's seen, right, well, okay, this is it. Like they shot at us with this caliber, this, and this. At that point, rules of engagement, got to defend ourselves. And after we got away from that threat, we would, take care of that threat.
It must have been nice to be able to reach back out against someone who's shooting at you. Like we didn't even have self-defense suites on the Auroras in those days. They added them later, but we didn't have chaff and flare or any of that kind of stuff. We didn't have a defense. Our only defense was to fly higher.
Yeah, it was. I just never knew why they kept doing it. Like, okay, well, we're gonna shoot at these guys 6 o'clock, and the next thing we blow them out of the street. I never understood that. They just kept doing it. But I guess in the end, like you're fighting somebody that probably wants to die anyway. A lot of times, and
I think it's
like
that.
I said, it was,
and I think a lot of them grew up in they're uneducated, like in the true meaning of the word, they're uneducated villagers who don't know better, and they're recruited into this thing that they're kind of brainwashed into joining. And I just think they don't know.
Yeah, it could be exactly right, man. Yeah, that's never know the why, but at the end of the day, it's like when that happens, you definitely got to react fast and and defend yourself.
100%, absolutely. So let's switch gears here a little bit and talk about your personal life. During all this fighting and war, you managed to meet your wife, Sherry. Can you tell us about her and how you met?
Yeah, so I just came back from a deployment. So this was actually, I think it was that deployment I'm telling you about. And, the 15 one. And I got back and a mutual friend invited us. She was going to college at Eastern New Mexico University to be a teacher. And then my friends were, hey, let's go to this party. These girls are going to be there, but first let's play basketball. And we went to basically Eastern New Mexico University, play basketball there. And there's this bridge that comes over to connect basically across the road to the dorms and stuff like that. And, so we played basketball. And I remember she was really good at basketball, man. She had this attitude, I grew up around Native Americans, right, and all that culture, right. And if you've seen Reservation Dogs, actually, Willie Jack, Pauline Alexis is from up there where you guys are, I think. But she had that sort of like the attitude that I remember sort of growing up. The things they would say like "let's go then," or as in "let's go then," or "do this, let's do this." She would say things like that. And at that moment, I asked her, I'm like, "Hey, are you Native American by any chance?" And we're on this bridge right after basketball, and she smiled and said, "Yeah." And just that moment, man, I realized I loved her, man, and like just an instant connection. Like they say, when you know. It was definitely one of those moments, right? Like that God gives us few of, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that happened. And yeah, so we got engaged right before I went to the helicopter training when I switched airframes to the Pave Hawk, and end up while I was going through initial qualification for that training, we ended up getting pregnant, and we needed TRICARE and things like that, and had the baby right when I got to Moody Air Force Base. 9 months later.
Which must have been tough.
Yeah, it was a beast. We get in this new area, and it's the most humid I've ever been in my life, and it's pretty much the Florida Georgia line, and alligators, mosquitoes, big as quarters when you're doing your pre-flight stuff like that. So
Must have been also tough though to have just had a baby. Now, did your family come with you?
yeah. So my wife, she was still had a bun in the oven, as they say, and I think I'd been there maybe. So October. She was born November. Yeah, so I got there October. She was born November 21st, and so a month and a half, 2 months, if that. We had a baby, and I'd already had some flights. So that you get basically initial qualification. That's the basic stuff, and then you get to your base, and at least the helicopter world, you get the mission qualification where you're shooting a minigun, the 50 cal, pop up targets, all that cool stuff. But yeah, I had to put a pause on that for the I guess paternity leave is what they call that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is important though, right? You got to take that time.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Now, did you find it difficult to turn off the warfighter in you and just be a normal person to date and love someone?
I did, yeah. It's so what would bother me was like when I was putting like towards the end, and I think I put her and my daughter through three or four deployments. Can't remember exactly, but you miss them, man. Like I hate to say it, like there's no, like when you're not married and all that, you don't even think about it, right? You don't man, I just go back and do whatever, right? But buy stuff on Amazon while I'm here to be there when I get back. But now it's like, man, I got a family to get back to, and like you see that side of things, and like my biggest fear was like guys would come home and like their kid wouldn't recognize them. Like I had that huge phobia of that, and thank God that never happened. But yeah, you think about the bigger picture. And what's important in your life at that point,
Yeah, it changes things for sure. Like I was fortunate and unfortunate. When I went on that tour, my first tour in Kuwait flying over Iraq was in 2014, and Melissa and I had been married for a month, and that was tough for sure. But adults can handle it. We've been together for a year and a half before that. We were able to call home and all that stuff. So it was tough, but like you get through it. I can't imagine doing that with a kid though. The fortunate part for me was that I never had kids anytime I deployed, and I can't imagine doing that.
Oh man. Yeah. I couldn't put in words like how much I miss my daughter, and just, that moment when you get home, like, people post these videos of kids running up to the dad, like that is a moment you'll never forget. I never recorded it or nothing like that, man, but just a beautiful moment that they recognize and they miss their dad. Right.
Yeah. Oh, those videos, they crush me, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you have a quote in the book by James R. Ward, Office of Strategic Services, and I'm going to quote it partially here. Men, special operations is a mistress. Your wives will envy her because she will have your hearts. Your wives will be jealous of her because of the power to pull you away. Did you find this was true with Sherry and your relationship with special ops as a couple?
Yeah, because you live that life for that long, and you're basically this special operations squadron where your whole the cool guy stuff, right? The zeal that comes with that, those moments, and like at the end, you're like, man, like I'm going away from my wife all the time, the 3 a.m. phone calls all the time, the TDYs half the year all the time training. It'll definitely pull you away from your wife, and like it's a very hard command to be in and have a good marriage. I'll say that, and you see a lot of divorces, unfortunately, but I will say it's getting a lot better since some of these programs they've came out with and the counseling and all that. But yeah, it's a job that when I signed up, or when we sign up, they sign up for that too in that life, and just the ops tempo, all that, like they're a big part of that. And, she's my rock, my crush. Without my wife and daughter, like I don't know where I'd be. I'd probably be in a ditch somewhere, honestly.
I've thought that myself many times.
Yeah.
I can relate.
Oh yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about coming home from deployments, your fear that your daughter wouldn't recognize you, things like that. Another thing that you mentioned in the book is trying to jump back into normal routine that she'd been managing without you for months. It's a super common point of friction among returning troops after a deployment. Can you tell us about this and how you navigated it?
Yeah, so like little things when you get back, like you're like, hey, I'm gonna mow the yard. Wife's like, I'm gonna do it. I got it, or like laundry, or like whatever. We sort of help each other out in our couples, right? And I had to sort of say, okay, she's been doing this for 4-6 months, whatever the case is, and like I'm gonna take a step back and ask her where I could be helpful versus like me just doing this and that, and especially with the kid getting warmed up to your family is what it is. Is there's a honeymoon phase where everything's all great the first few days when you're back, and then there's a realization of that. At least in my experience, it was like that.
No, I think that's extremely common, and I think it's important for people to hear that because it's hard because you come home and you think like, finally, I'm home. Everything's good again. Everything is going to be okay. And then like there's this friction because there's all these adjustments to be made and they've gotten used to you not being home. And like the truth is that's a good thing because what are they supposed to do the whole time you're home? They're supposed to just like lay around and cry. No, they have to adjust and they have to figure out a way to make life work without you. But then you come home and now it's like time to reintegrate. And it is really challenging. And I think it's a good thing for people to hear that and know like if they go through that, that's normal.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit, but around the time that you had your daughter, you switched to the HH-60G Pavehawk helicopter. For listeners, this is a heavily modified Black Hawk helicopter. Can you tell us about what makes it different and what its intended use is?
Yeah. So the Pavehawk helicopter is I was in the 41st Jolly Green or 41st Rescue Squadron, the Jolly Greens, and sort of a little history. The Jolly Greens, they got that name from the Vietnam rescues where they would land these two helicopters in the rice paddy fields. And long story short, it would look like two green footprint were there when they left and they'd already got the guy and rescued him, right? So a lot of history there, a lot of, like I said, this history and just an awesome community. And so I was on the Pavehawk HH-60, which is like a Black Hawk helicopter, but there's all kinds of different, defensive systems, radars, refueling probes, hoists, all this different, stuff, 2 different weapon systems. And basically you're there for like personal recovery. However, the times I did it, we would always usually train to CASEVAC, which is more common,
Can you explain what a CASEVAC is?
Yeah. So a CASEVAC is like, okay, there's let's say there's a mass casualty, like an IED blast or something like that. Right. And, they call you in to rescue these guys, basically when there's a hot landing zone, stuff like that. And
yeah,
you pull these guys out of these situations and get them back within the golden hour, which is, what that means is like there's an hour to get them back to the operating table, usually because there's a higher probability of them living.
Yeah.
And in a few words, I can put that in. But yeah, it's basically on somebody's worst day, you're the guy to get them out of the situation and bring them back again. Sort of common theme here, like you don't ever have to do this job, but if somebody's number called, you want to be the guy to go get them. And
yeah,
so they could go see their family. And it's a huge responsibility. Being trusted with someone's best friend's life, right? And that was those guys in that squadron. And gals, man, they were truly the best to me, man, and like very noble, very humble, very professional, like probably the best people I ever met in my life.
What made you decide to switch to the rescue aviation community?
I always had this another common theme with me was like I always felt like I'd never done enough, man. Like even on gunships, as much in the fight as you are in that aircraft, like to me there was really nothing more noble than like pulling someone out, saving their life, Again, I get it now, especially like you don't have to do that job, but it happens and you want to be the guy to rescue them, man. And like, to me, there's no more of a noble cause, right? Like John 15:13 in the Bible, I think Jesus says greater love hath no man than this, and a man lay down his life for his friends. And that's sort of a big motto, that others may live is the motto in that community. And, the pararescuemen you have the privilege and honor to fly with on the back of your helicopters is when they're very best in the world at what they do,
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked a little bit with, we call them SAR techs here, search and rescue technicians. And ours are not, it's not a combat SAR capability. We don't have that in Canada, but they do all the search and rescue work within Canada domestically. And they're incredible people. They're just amazing. That was actually my goal was before I was diagnosed was to go and fly search and rescue next. And it's just such an amazing, noble job. So I can see why you were drawn to it.
Oh yeah, and those guys, man, they're the most like, if you ever like meet those guys, they're the most humble, like down to earth. Like
Yep.
you wouldn't know, man, that they're like, some super ninja that's a paramedic. You're like, man, like these guys are. I mean, really are, in my opinion, our nation's best, and like it was an honor to fly and work with those guys.
Yeah, we had a tour with the PJs in Ali Al Salem in Kuwait. A little chance to sort of see who would come and get us if something went wrong, and they were amazing. It was like,
oh yeah,
I felt so much better afterwards just seeing like how well equipped they were, how well trained they were. They were all like super fit, amazing, impressive people, and like super humble. It was really cool.
Yeah, and that whole like the special tactics squad, like all those guys community, like they're all like that, man. If you look at those guys, they have the most pristine uniform when they're not on the in combat type situations. But yeah, just humble dudes, man. All that.
And I said PJs there for the listeners. That's parajumpers. They're the rescue jumpers who go into combat zones.
Correct. Yeah.
The global F-35 program bolsters an allied defense industrial base with Canadian components in every jet. With a total program of record of over 3,500 jets across 20 nations, the F-35 program is projected to produce over 15.5 billion Canadian dollars in industrial value for Canada, including current and projected production and sustainment opportunities. Learn more at www.f35.com/Canada.
So how did your training go in the rescue aviation community?
Yeah, it was started off terrible. I coming from a fixed wing aircraft, it's rare a guy, especially an enlisted guy, goes from a gunship to a rescue helicopter, right? Like a fixed wing to rotary wing. And if you look at a helicopter, like if you've never been on one, you're like, besides that one time, like how does this thing fly? There's little things like, the tail rotor, right? Like how does that give me 2.5% of my lift, stuff like that. And and at this point in time, the Air Force had created I call it a Swiss Army knife in the sky. And what I mean by that is Special Missions Aviator is now the title. And it's like you combine your aero gunner with your loadmaster and your flight engineer on these different airframes, the Gunship, the CV-22, the Pavehawk. And yeah, so you're doing all these different tasks. And it was just so much knowledge. And I thought about it. I was like, man, if I'd had to like study anything this hard, like I would be a doctor by now. It was just that level and depth of like, little things like, hey, we're a drop of fuel, like get us all the way to combustion. You have to draw this system out,
Yep.
All this, that level of knowledge, and then there's the gunnery, which is realistically probably 10 to 20% of that job, I'd say. And then you have your, alternate insert extraction type, device, like your rope ladder, your hoist, things like that, right? Fast ropes. And you're learning all this different stuff at once, but it was a beast, man. I had a funny moment during my recommendation ride before my check ride. And long story short, we were in a minigun pattern. I had set right on the whole time during my training, man. And like this guy, actually, I'm glad we're talking about this. He emailed me the other day, but I was sitting on the left side for the first time, and I think I had like a burrito or something, just didn't eat right, and and basically they teach you to like keep your skin up even with a gun malfunction. And I'm on the minigun, and like the rounds had had so many in a row, but the rounds that went down in the chute. So I'm hanging out of the helicopter, with my mask on, not getting my eyes on the train and stuff like that. And I'm getting nauseated, like super nauseated, long story short. And then I just basically just like, man, I got to puke, bro. And like, I'm outside. I'm outside the helicopter. He had his door open in the back, the cabin door. And I was like, bro, like that, it like goes back in, it like frags him out. Like he didn't even say anything. He sort of looks at me and goes like, one of those numbers.
Yeah.
And I knew I'd, hooked that ride, but I felt it. Yeah. We joke about it now, but yeah, and basically even that, he was like, man, if you'd done this one step right during your de-arming checklist, like, you would have passed. But basically he got me better, man. He, even with all that, man, he got me, worked with me, and my check ride went really well. And
yeah.
It was, like I said, the best day of my life is when I got the Dollar Green patch and the Spectre patch, man.
That's a pretty huge accomplishment. Those are two really elite units, really elite organizations to be part of.
Yeah, and I basically I wanted both of those, and then you asked sort of why I went to helicopters, because to me, like when you think traditional door gunner, right, where the term the whole 9 yards comes from, all like Vietnam, right? Like I wanted to be a door like that gunner, like that person, and that it was about 4 or 5 years of my career approximately, and I was so awesome to be in that unit, man.
You said the whole 9 yards. What's the connection there with door gunning?
Yeah, I actually had a chief ask me this once. He was like, Dyer, he's like, where's the term the whole 9 yards come from? And I had like Google near me, the top computer. And basically, it's like in Vietnam when they had 9 yards of ammunition left.
Oh,
They're about to run out of ammunition. Yeah, so that's where the term "the whole 9 yards" comes from the machine gunners. Yeah.
oh, wow. I thought it was like a football term or something.
I didn't know that until he asked me, and I had to look it up. He's about to take my gunner car, but yeah,
Oh, wow.
it was a cool moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to get into a tough story. We're going to talk about a Casevac you took part in East Africa.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about June 8th, 2018. Al-Shabaab militants attacked 40 U.S. SOF personnel and 800 partner nation forces with heavy machine gun fire and mortars. Your radio suddenly crackles to life with scramble, scramble, scramble. First of all, what was this day like for you up to this point? Where were you at the time?
So we'll just say East Africa. That's about all I'm gonna say about that. But
Oh, yeah, sure.
we were holding down. Yeah, we were holding down 7 days of standing by 24/7 Casevac alert. Like basically, we could get alerted any time to go pick these guys up and get them out of a bad situation. So we, day 7, I'm at the talk, and I remember like, man, I'm exhausted. Like I'm gonna go sleep. Sleep when you can sleep. Eat when you can eat. And we end up taking off, man, right after the scramble. That moment, right when I lay down, scramble, 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 run to the aircraft. And we take off and we're on like a right-hand bank. And I could see round impacts, like the dirt 15 feet above the air. And what it was we were on a right-hand bank and the left gunner had a runaway gun.
Oh,
And so like, yeah, the sear notch on the 50 cal was like worn or something like that. And, so I could see his impacts. And then simultaneously I poured the flare pins, which flares is what protects us from, IR surface to air threats, heat seeking threats. Right. And then, so that was going on, all this within the same minute, and then I'm hearing broken communications with the JTAC, which I can piece together what's a 5-line. So we have a runaway gun, we have all of our flares jettisoned. I could literally feel the heat from them. Surprised I have my eyebrows left, and then there's this broken 5-line, from the JTAC and the guys on the ground. And so it's about a 15-minute flight, man. And there's literally a point where everything was so chaotic. I'm like, what the F is going on? Like I literally said that over comms, right? And so I take a second. I'm like, okay, like this is going to happen. Like we're going to get these guys. And we get overhead, and the JTAC. What it was there was 12 bad guys in the tree line, Al-Shabaab, and we basically had to do about 4 gun patterns. A racetrack type pattern. All 4 guns on the target and that he had marked, and basically we got 8 out of 12 of them. Enough to suppress at that point to where we could land. So we were lead. We land first, and we land on this narrow dirt road. I remember that, a little bit of a brownout condition where the dust comes up and all that. And, they had put one American, near the ox tanks, and they started giving him a tracheotomy. Then another Green Beret beside me. Then a partner nation guy who had, he got shot in the guts, what happened to him. And, we pitch pull, which, we lifted off right and go right in back into the gun pattern. And, trails on the ground picking up their 3 cat alphas or 2 cat alphas at that point. And basically, the cat alpha means that, you have to get these guys back for the golden hour I was talking about earlier. And,
yeah.
So we do, I think, a few gun patterns there, and we get to the point where, like, okay, we got to get this guy back. And we egress the area, we leave the area. And then, thank God, like, right when we left, that, they came behind us. And then, we were in a trail formation on the way back. And we land, I get more bullets for my 50 cal, get more gas, what we call hot gas, which the rotors are turning, and I'm putting gas back in the helicopter. And then we take back off, and then they had one more guy to pick up. And then basically they picked him up, and we did about multiple gun patterns on the same tree line. And I think I shot about half or more of my rounds at that point. Just, basically got to keep those guys' heads down, man. And, we egress, get back, and then the experienced gunner was like, hey, Dyer, check the really cool dude, and awesome guy, man. He said, hey, check the aircraft for bullet holes, and I'm looking underneath the belly, the tail, all that stuff. And I come around to the front, and, my aircraft commander, the pilot, I could see on his face everything that happened and what happened when the American got back, the one that was getting the tracheotomy. He got on the operation table, and he ended up passing away, unfortunately. And yeah, so I tell people, man, like I didn't know what sacrifice was to that day. You're talking about someone's brother, someone's son, someone's friend. So yeah, that definitely 100% sticks with me. And, it does hurt, man, but at the same time, like, that was our nation's very best, and I was just proud to even, be with those guys in that moment.
It sounds like a really, really difficult day.
Oh, 100%. Well, it was, to this day, man, I think about it. And it's just, everything that goes wrong and, went wrong in the first minute. And then, that, and it's, but at the end of the day, like, that's our nation's best, that guy,
Mm-hmm.
with my shoulder on it type of men, he's a 5th Special Forces group. And but those are our best, man. And not, like I said, I didn't know what sacrifice was or service before self. And to witness that, is forever etched in my heart.
Yeah, I can believe that. It must be really challenging to be in the back of that helicopter, to have those wounded comrades in the back there with you, and to see all those sights and sounds and smells. Like, what's that like?
Yeah, it's a smell. And, if you ever smelled blood and, some the stuff that comes with that and the gunpowder, you never forget it. I'll say that. And, when the dust settles and you get back and, and I remember like, they basically had to watch the cabin and stuff after something like that. And, just that moment, man, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and just, the mind's a very tricky thing too, to where you're like, if I'd have been there, like, 1 minute earlier, 5 minutes earlier, 10 minutes, like you ask yourself that question, like,
Mm-hmm.
would have lived, right? Like, come to find out, like, I'm at peace with it now, and that he got hit direct with a mortar. So like, basically they said, right when he got on the operating table, like he would have passed anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
it was a sad day, but again, man, it's the best side of combat search and rescue than the worst side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the upside is like, you guys had so much going wrong that day, and you still went and prosecuted the mission. And like, who knows how bad it could have been if you weren't there.
Oh yeah.
To like, how many, you guys said right away you took out eight out of 12 or so of the militants. Like,
Yeah. It was 8 out of 12 guys. They ended up, and they gave us total there, and in the end, and it was 8 out of 12 on that tree line, and and there was basically, you could see our guys shooting with our, like, even our partner nation discos, they're a level of like a 50 cal type thing.
Yep.
And we're shooting with our 50 cals, and it was just, just giving that tree line hell, just to be able to land, to get those guys, so it was definitely a moment that I never thought I'd be doing close air support with a rescue helicopter with a 50 cal, which is
yeah.
very, very rare, but it happened naturally on my first CASEVAC ever. So
Yeah. We've mentioned that the motto of rescue is these things we do that others may live. You guys are coming into a hot LZ, a hot landing zone. You say there's tracer fire all around the helicopter. What's that like? How does that motto embodied by your crew's actions?
Yeah, so I remember like the moment that it sort of hit me, like we're on short final, like basically getting ready to land on this narrow road, right? And I could still see like our guys shooting the disc of fire in the tree line, and a couple back and forth, right? And like, man, I was like this could be it, this is what I signed up for. This is that moment, that whole model, these things we do that others may live, it definitely ain't sunny in 75 when you land in these hot LZs and get those guys, man. It's I realize what I realized in those moments is the days where everything's going against you, man, your comms, your EPs, that's the day where everybody that depends on you needs you to be the very best. You could be the very best aviator you could be, because if it was sunny in 75 and it was easy, then everybody do it right. And
that's right.
That's where like you want to be a part of that unit. And that's what I signed up for. And it happened.
How did you keep your composure? You've got wounded allies, wounded Americans on board. How do you keep focused and do your job during that time? Do you think it's just your training takes over? Or?
Yeah. And you're sort of like, you've been there so many times in training to where like the next thing you know, man, you're just what's that saying? Reaction versus response. Like you're doing everything you've trained a million times to do. And you realize there's a moment where like, this isn't foreign to me. Like I've been here before. I've heard these comms before, like this is the real deal, so you sort of turn that switch on and suppress the adrenaline as much as you can or something like that. And then, you do the best you can with what you have,
Yeah. So as we said, when the dust settled, you learned that an American patient had not survived. And I think you said that was the guy who had the tracheotomy.
It was.
You state in your book that you were never the same after that moment. Can you tell us about how this affected you and what was going through your head?
Yeah. So I constantly thought about it, and I remember there was things, man, like that I can't even put in words really. Like when you hear someone say, hey, like, in the camp that we were at, like, hey, we need some OSB board to build a casket, and there's a moment to where like his brothers, took him on the ramp of the 130 to get him to like further up in Africa than to back to America, the deceased body, right? But yeah, you see this flag draped over this casket and these Green Berets carrying this guy. I mean, I'll never forget that image, like truly our nation's best, like the one in the 100 Heraclitus talks about, right? Like that guy, and it came at a cost.
Yeah. It's I know a lot of people who were at a lot of ramp ceremonies in Afghanistan, and that stuff stays with you. It's like the most clear moment of understanding what sacrifice really means. And I remember even one time in Canada, when a fallen soldier comes home, they land in Trenton, Ontario, and then they take this main highway down to Toronto to the coroner's office with the body, and the family is in a limousine. The hearse comes through, and there's a convoy with police escort, and the family's in a limousine and stuff. And during Afghanistan, what they would do is the overpasses of the highway, people would line them with flags and signs and stuff to try to support the family and to show respect for the soldier coming through. And I remember one time when I was like 22, 23, I was driving through that area and I noticed all these people in the overpasses, and I was like, what is going on here today? And all of a sudden I realized what it was, and I just got so choked up. I was with a friend of mine, and we pulled over. We went onto the overpass and waited too. And when the family came through, just like the tears started coming.
Oh yeah.
It's such a real thing to see somebody who's made that sacrifice be on that journey.
Yeah, 100%. And the service before self is one of the Air Force core values, and every branch has core values. And I'll be honest, I never knew what that word meant till that day, man. And that guy, service before himself, right? That sacrifice, that very tip of the spear, that freedom is the price for that.
Yep. So this mission earned the USAF's Jolly Green Rescue Mission of the Year award for 2018. What did that mean to you and your crew?
So that's a Air Force level award. Basically the most notable rescue, of the year rescue mission. Basically you get it from the SecAv. I got to see the SecAv and all that, but it was basically, it was like, I still thought about the fact, okay, we saw the best side of that job, and that others may live. We got to do that. And, there is guys that get to go home and see their family, because of that mission. Not just, not my actions, but our team's actions, right? And the team concept behind that. And it takes everybody, man, from being the bullet, and to get those guys home, and then to always have that somber reminder, that like, man, like the price of freedom is definitely not free. And then one eagle, one America, when he got back, had passed away. So It's a very, very dull, double-edged sword, and it hurts sometimes.
Yeah, I believe that. I can imagine that receiving an award for a mission where the outcome was not what you wanted must have been difficult.
100%. Yeah, it was a hard thing to do, but I look at it now and I'm like, man, like, this is all part of that journey. Our scars is what, defines us, like I used to ignore my scars, and now I'm embrace them and say that's a part of my aviation life. It's a part of who I am. And, and I that's another reason why I maybe wrote this story. I don't know, to paint a picture to the rest of the world, like, whether it's America or Canada, like this is what goes on while people are sleeping, right? Like this, this calls for freedom.
Yeah. So eventually you returned to Gunships, and after a slow tour in Iraq, you decided to retire. Can you tell us about what led to that decision?
Yeah, so we do my last trip. Actually, it was on my 20th anniversary, July 18th of 2020. And, we get done with this 3 or 4 month trip, and it's so slow, and the whole sense of purpose, man, it was just gone, man. It was just hardly anything. I don't even think we shot maybe once, but like I get back and I hit the retirement button. And when I did that, like I realized my whole sense of identity, my sense of purpose, my whole reason for being, especially on the gunship, make sure those guys get home, was gone. And I dealt with that hard, man. Like I fell hard. Like what started as a, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but a weekend drinking habit turned into a pint, of hard liquor a night, at least just to go to sleep. And, my wife gave me that ultimatum of like, me or the kid or the alcohol. And I chose my family, and, which in turn I got help with the USOCOM, psychiatrist there with a POTF program, and, got help and prolonged exposure treatment. And, I could say I'm a better man for that, making that decision. And, she told me 100 times to tell the story at least, and I said no. And right. And when my last out processing appointment, you get your realization, like I said earlier, you walk out that door and you realize there's not even a door handle on the way in to get back in, symbolic to this machine keeps going on. And, I had to put it all behind me at that point and like realize this machine goes on, get over myself, quit feeling sorry for myself. And like, I talked to a preacher and he was like, these things happen. Like, I'd lost a lung at this point, which is another factor in there with all this. But like, he's like, life circumstances can make you better or bitter. And I chose better, and that's where I am.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That loss of identity, I can speak from personal experience, is really, really challenging. I think everyone is going to go through that who spends a sizable, even maybe if they even do a 5-year tour. But
Oh yeah,
anyone who spends a good chunk of their life in the military, it leaves a hole when you leave. You don't even realize how much of your identity is wrapped up around it until it's not there anymore. And all of a sudden, it's a big psychological blow to deal with losing that. And suddenly you think, well, who am I now? Like, if I'm not that guy, who am I? And you have to find where else do you have identity in your life?
Yeah, and it's there's little things too that like walking out of a building reaching for my hat, right? Like just it was so different for me because all I had known, like we spent like half our adult life in this thing, right? Like it's crazy, and then all of a sudden it's just like a switch that got turned back off to like, man, I got to be a civilian again. I gotta be a normal Joe, right? An average Joe, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I will say, when I was getting help, one of the things that the lady said to me, I'll never forget, is like, she's like, what's your legacy now? She's like, okay, all that stuff's cool, flying on the gunship and the rescue helicopter, that's cool, and that was your legacy then, but what's your legacy now? And the point she was making, I get it now, like, what's important, what's relevant now is being the best husband I could be. That's my mission now, being the best father I could be. And like I said, I got called a lot of different call signs, man, but when my daughter called me dad, I was the best one, man. And I mean that, she's my pride and joy. So that's my mission now.
Yeah. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. That's where I found my identity again as well. It was in being a husband and a father, and,
oh yeah,
just trying to be a good man and live up to that, what that means. So,
oh yeah,
I'm glad you had that too.
Thanks, brother.
Now, another mantra you have for yourself that relates to this time in your life is, how did I make humanity better today? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So when I, I was drinking real bad, and when I decided to get help, and as I'm getting help later, I look in that mirror every day, like, and it's a question that's either gonna be yes or no. Like, did I make humanity better today? And it's either yes, like I did something for fellow man, fellow service members, fellow Americans, fellow Canadians, whatever the case may be, and or did I just sit on the sideline and not do anything, just think about myself, and and I realized with that, comes a question, okay, did I break my promise about drinking, today? So that accountability it's a real thing. It's a surreal thing. If you're ever in that moment, the most, honest conversation is the one I have with myself that night. I'm glad I did. So
yeah. I'd like to read a couple powerful quotes from the book and then ask you a question. The first is, it's hard to hold on to hope and purity when good people endure unimaginable pain. And the second is, I drank to fall asleep, drank to be social, drank to escape, and sometimes I drank because I felt like I wanted to die. What do you think led to you being in this state?
I would say that, like, the feeling sorry for myself did not help at all. That was dumb on my part. And then also, like, the identity, I felt irrelevant, man. Like, I felt like everything that I had done, as soon as I walked out that door, and there's no doorknob, it's forgotten, right? It's dust in the wind. And I realized, can I remember my great grandfather's name? Probably not. I can't, and I just wondered, one day, like, will my great grandson or granddaughter remember my name? And basically I learned to live in the moment at that moment. You know what I mean? What's important is now, man. What can I change at this moment, to be better?
Yeah. So we've kind of talked about drinking and finding your sobriety, but mentally speaking, how are you doing at this point?
I'm doing really well. I know I didn't do the meds thing when I was in, and I'll be honest, I do meds once I get out and use the Veterans Affairs and all that. But I still got a psychologist there I could at a moment's notice, and I did continue help with a psychologist when I got out, and I feel good about that. I'm a better man for that, and it's just really like every now and then it's just like a muscle. You got to work it out, man. You gotta bleed the words on the page, And I will say, take this moment to say this, that every veteran has a story, no matter how big or small you think it may be. Like, I felt better personally on this platform, writing it and getting it out there. And just like your podcast is an awesome platform for stuff like this. And, if you have words in your heart, just bleed them on a page and tell the world, man, because without these things, like, these stories die in the sand. And I refuse to let that happen,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned meds. I don't know why, but it's like another step that's hard. Like, the first step, asking for help, is really hard. Saying, I think I need to talk to somebody, is really hard. And then admitting like, hey, I might need meds too. Like that's really hard too for some reason. I was the same way. I was like, okay, therapy, sure. I'm not touching meds. And I'm also medicated, and I'm glad I am. I needed that, and that's okay. And maybe one day I won't need it anymore, but I don't know why there seems to be like a self-imposed stigma on going for that. But, it's not like, I think we grew up with this image of like any kind of antidepressants turning you into kind of a zombie, or
Exactly. I was going to say that.
Like you're not going to be yourself anymore. I didn't have that at all. I just felt better.
Yeah, I would say definitely. It took about 2 weeks, but when they kicked in, I definitely feel level, like, more clarity, more desire to get up and do something in the morning, not hit the snooze button 5 times. And all those meds sort of help with that, and I'm glad I take them, just like you said, that, like I couldn't imagine if I didn't at this point,
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing you said in the book that I really liked, that I really related to rather, was like things like a car wash being daunting. Like, honestly, there was a point where I felt like mowing the lawn was this giant task. Doing the laundry felt like this huge thing that I can't do. And it sounds so silly, I think, from the outside looking in, but if you've been there, you get it,
Yeah, it was things like that. Like Walmart would freak me out pretty bad, like I don't know what it was, all the different people, all these different things. Like it would just being sort of enclosed in that car wash, like stuff like that. Like it definitely messed with me, and like I didn't want to do those. And, now I face them, that's the difference now.
Yeah, I can relate to it's only this year with the help of occupational therapist that I started doing small grocery runs again. Because I don't know what it is. Like you said, like, I don't know if it's all the people. I think it's partly like I get overwhelmed if I can't find something, but it's just stuff that triggers that stress response, right? And you just got to find a way to work through it, though. You can't let it control you forever.
100%. It was so bad to me to the point where, like, for whatever reason, I can't really tell you why I would do this, but I would time myself to get to work.
Yeah.
Like how dumb is that? Like with a stopwatch, right? Like, and I'm just like, why am I doing this? Like, it's little things like that. I just knew I wasn't me, like, whether it was me putting a constraint on myself for all the timeline sort of things we dealt with all these years,
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I just think these are important things to, like, you and I are almost just chatting now, but what was it like for you? What was it like for me? I think it's important because for listeners who are wondering, like, why are they having this conversation right now? It's really for the people out there who might be feeling the same way. This part of the episode might not be for you. It might be for that person who is like getting really stressed out when they go to the grocery store and they can't figure out why, or getting overwhelmed by simple tasks. Like, if that's you, again, same as the first episode, we'll put a link in for the Canadian Forces Member Assistance Program. And you should think about why that's happening. Okay, so we're going to talk quickly about CIFMAP, or the Canadian Forces Member Assistance Program. This program is for regular force members, reserves who are on duty during an incident, and parents and siblings of CAF regular and reserve force members who are injured or who die while in service. The program provides direct access to telephone counseling services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. From my own personal experience, you can call or use their online chat feature to make an appointment. They then set you up with a professional, and I believe you get 10 free mental health sessions. For more details, I highly encourage you to Google CIFMAP, that's CFMAP, and click on the canada.ca link. The beauty of this program is it's free and confidential, so no one in the CAF will know you used it, not your supervisor or chain of command, and not your doctor. I don't say that to encourage people hiding their conditions from their doctor. I personally think it's important to be open with your doctor about what you're going through, but if you're afraid to ask for help, it's a great way to dip your toes in the water confidentially. So how do you contact them? Listen closely, everyone. Take out your phone and save this number because you or someone you love may need it one day. The number is 1-800-268-7708. Again, that's 1-800-268-7708. And now, on with the show. So you say something that was almost a breakthrough for me when it comes to big questions you chase in therapy, which is that seeking answers doesn't come with clear resolutions, only moments of clarity. Can you explain this?
Yeah. So, I asked the question, why does God let, bad things happen to good people? I still struggle with that question, to be honest with you.
Of course.
If somebody knows, please tell me. And I'm still looking for that answer, but at the same time, I realized that there is the argument where, like, God gives some of those battles to to his toughest people, right? And the ones that can handle it. And basically, what I realize is there is a silver lining, man. If you can get through this adversity, and the whole title Moonchild, like to me, like there would be no light without some darkness, right? Those 100% Illuminates, and that's when the moon burns the brightest, in my opinion, on those darkest nights, man. And that's the clarity right there,
Mm-hmm. Would you say that today you found peace?
Yeah, I would say I found peace, and I'm just like my biggest fear in the world, right, is like talking about this stuff with people, and here I am, on this podcast, right, and just talking to you and the audience, and I feel like I face it now, and I'm content with it, and I feel better after telling it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, like writing this book and the topics that you covered and talking about struggling, talking about drinking, like those are things that often can make someone feel pretty ashamed. It took a real level of vulnerability to write that. How did you get comfortable with that? Was that just that repetition of writing and things like that, or?
Yeah. So what I would do, man, is every time I want to pick up a bottle, man, it's cliche to say, I picked up a pen, and like it could be something as simple as a notepad near my nightstand, right? And I would think about something, write it down, and in the morning I wake up and try to make sense out of all of this, and then get it to a flow of like a story,
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of the interview here. Before we close the show, can you remind our audience once again how to contact you for speaking engagements, collaborations, or the best way to buy your book?
Yeah, so the best way to contact me directly for speaking engagements would be anthonyp.dyer@gmail.com. And then as far as the finding the book, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere they sell books, and Trademarker Media. If you just look that up with my name, you'll see a link to the book, and The Roots and Wings of a U.S. Air Force Combat Special Missions Aviator.
That's great. And what we'll do as well is send me the links, and we'll put them in the show notes as well for our listeners to check out there on the website as well.
Will do, bro. I appreciate that.
All right. So, Anthony, that wraps up our 2-part chat for today. Honestly, man, this has been such a pleasure and an honor to connect with you, to help share your story, and just to kind of, I feel like we've formed some camaraderie here from some shared experiences, and I really enjoyed that. So thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for sharing your experiences with us.
Thanks, brother. It's been real, man. I wanted to do this for a while, man. I'm glad we got to get up, Brian, and thanks for letting me use your platform to get these words. I truly appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. All right, that wraps up our 2-part chat with Anthony Dyer, retired United States Air Force aerial gunner and author of the book Moonchild. Now, this past summer, something really cool happened. Captain John Livingston was making his way across the country with his family to move from Comox, BC to Greenwood, Nova Scotia. About halfway through that journey, as they passed through Manitoba, John decided to stop by my house to record in our studio to share his experiences in flight training as well as operationally flying the CH-149 Cormorant in the challenging environment of the Rocky Mountains. So tune in next week to hear that. You don't want to miss it. Do you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard in this show? Would you or someone you know make a great guest, or do you have a great idea for a show? You can reach out to us at thepilotprojectpodcast@gmail.com or on all social media at podpilotproject. And be sure to check out that social media for lots of great videos of our RCAF and mission aviation aircraft. As always, we'd like to thank you for tuning in and ask for your help with the big 3. That's like and follow us on social media, share with your friends, and follow and rate us 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Keep the blue side up. See ya!
Engineer, shut down all 4. Shutting down all 4 engines.
As an F-35 partner, Canadian companies have access to global supply chain opportunities, enhancing workforce skills and securing long-term industrial benefits in design, production, and maintenance. Each F-35 produced contains more than 3.2 million Canadian dollars of Canadian content today, including the Canada-made horizontal tail in Winnipeg, the engine sensor in Ottawa, and stealth panels made of composite materials in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. Learn more at www.f35.com/Canada.